my friends. I just decided I needed more tea to keep going. All right. Did anybody get outside and enjoy the day? Somebody please have done it for me.
We went out for a walk. It was good.
Oh, good. I was out at like 8 this morning for a walk, but I haven't gotten much farther past my screen. So, but it's a screen filled with lovely people, so that's good. How about, hey, Sister V, how about if you pray us in and I'll pray us out?
Okay.
All right.
The Lord be with you.
Also with
you.
Gracious God, we thank you for giving us hearts to love and minds to think and hands and feet to work. Bless us as we continue to learn about your call to us to be the body of Christ in the world. And we thank you for giving us the urgency and the energy to address the inequities and the pains in our world. And we also thank you for the joy that we find in community with one another. Bless us as we continue this work. Give us your wisdom, give us your courage, give us your laughter, and give us your joy. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Friends, if you reflect on our conversation from last week, if you can remember our conversation from last week, what might stand out to you? What feeling did you walk away with? Well, as an opening gambit, that works really well. What do you think? Okay, I see Rosemary and then I see Joanne. Thank you.
Rose, I was hoping for more complexity.
Yeah.
More specificity. Because, you know, it's been a while on this issue, and I was hoping for not necessarily directives, but again, a more complex analysis of why and how do we not or gather or build and you know, but that's just me.
Okay. All right. Did you get any more in your reading for this week?
Nope.
Nope.
But that's okay. I mean, I'm trying to read as much as I can, and maybe I'm just here that you can never not learn enough. I'm just saying. But that was my Bishop. I do what you ask. I think that's in my vows.
You know, it might well be there, Joanne. All right, Rosemary, what do you think? Thank you.
You're muted, Rosemary.
You're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, that radical welcoming is far more than just inclusion of a diverse group. It's more than that. It's an effort to include people into everything you do.
Yeah.
In the church.
Yeah. Yep. And it may even be more than that. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else stand out for you?
This was not directly because of, well, the book brought it up for me, was just a really intense frustration, which I guess is kind of the point, you know, if we get enough holy frustration around the issues of lack of welcome. But every time I read a new piece, I was like, yeah, exactly. You know, that I don't find that in our churches, or I don't find that, or I wish I found that. And so, you know, at every turn it was like, man, we could do better. And that brought up a little bit of frustration for me.
Yeah, there you go. Anything else?
You know, I wasn't on last week. I'm sorry I wasn't able to be on, but I have been reading the book, and I think it's really great, and it is also so applicable to All Saints Pontiac right now, because we want to have a new beginning. We want to change. We've been inspired by a group that's done the Sacred Ground, and we've done a lot of changing in a small group, and our goal is to make sure everybody gets a chance to go through that. But I like Stephanie Speller's the way that she writes is the same way that she talks, I think, and so I like that. It's clear, but I also think that it's not a way of doing things, it's a way of being. All the time.
Yeah. And there's a point where that, for me, can sometimes almost get overwhelming. It's like, oh, I got to keep doing. Oh. So, Cindy, go ahead.
It was a feeling of desire, but frustration that where I'm at, that we're not even on the radar, that we're more in maintenance mode than we are in reaching out mode. One of the people from our church says, and I don't think it's necessarily wrong, that some people just want us to stay open long enough to bury them. So they're not really looking to do anything differently. But I really think this is what the church should be, but I don't know how we get people to see that without being critical.
I think Sunday's reading is about overturning in the temple. I don't know. I think that's what it is. And I apologize. My Tally got a new duck. Somebody else was raising their hand. Barbara.
Oh, you're muted, Barbara.
I was impressed by reading the section about God is in the business of creating, shaping, and making things new, because I've always believed that, because we sing unto the Lord a new song, and the Lord has done marvelous things and done all these new things, but I always related it to the antique past. And all of a sudden, the idea came to me, of course, God's still doing this right now. And I began to relate that to society and the culture and what we're doing right now. And I hadn't related it to, God is doing new things. I hadn't related it to now in our society right now. So that made a big impression on me.
Right. No, they weren't talking about dogs. No, this is a Zoom call. It's largely limited to cats. Yes, I know. That's all. Going forward, what moved you? What piqued your interest in what we read for this coming week, or today? Turns out.
I think what got my attention is on page 84, where she says, just kind of, as she's talking about things, doing with others rather than doing for others. And I think that, so often we think of ourselves as being, these nice Christian people who do good things for other people, but we don't really hang out with them. I mean, really, there's a limit. And I think of my experiences with our food pantry, and how, as time went by working there, I became friends with the people who became to food pantry. And then when we had our Christmas meal with them, I enjoyed sitting at the table with them and talking to them. And that's where it really happens, I think.
And take it another step. Just because we happen to be poor doesn't mean we don't want to volunteer and be part of something greater than ourselves.
Right.
And so then they're suddenly like, oh, so how are we doing this ministry where we are feeding our neighbors and we are all neighbors? How are we doing this together? It's really quite something. My experience is when we invite people to volunteer and take ownership and then begin to change the program. Anything else that stood out? Coming up, and yeah, Bill.
Well, I'm from the same congregation as Barbara Scoville and some others up here. And my concern about the poor is that as they walk in our doors, they see middle class and upper middle class people. Now, how are we going to deal with that issue? We need to take the steps to help poor people feel more welcome.
Which, Bill, is probably the most perfect segue to where we're going now. So what I would love for us to do, friends, is I want to do a quick tour through Stephanie's description of the inviting, inclusion, and radical welcome. So let's get that out there. It's right there on page 64, but let's talk about the differences in those three places. Go for it.
I actually highlighted the quote beginning the chapter. It says, "People don't want to be projects." And I think that it's a really good intro into looking at these three different types of congregation, just inviting, including, or radical welcome.
Yeah. Absolutely. What else?
So perhaps if you could imagine, like, the people from our food pantry either coming to church or, of course, they're always invited to a Christmas service after the meal. But instead of just inviting them to the service, inviting them to help with the service, like bring up the elements or helping people to find a seat or whatever jobs that we can give them that would be good for a newcomer to do. That would take it a step further into inclusion and make it their service instead of just our service for them.
Absolutely. So let's just go through some of the attributes. So what do we got here? We've got, what's the message? What's the goal in the three churches, the three types of communities?
Yep, Cindy?
I think the inviting church doesn't get it. They miss the point, kind of, but they think they're doing the right thing. But what they want to say is, come on in, we've got it all together. Be part of us, not what gifts you have that we need or could grow from. It's assimilation. It's, be one of us. You're welcome to come in, and we expect you to be one of us.
Yep. And the result is they get
not much.
because they're actually inviting, right? Because not every church is inviting. I mean, let's actually get a mark here, friends. Not every church does invite.
So there's a column before this.
There is. So they get a healthy number of folks, but its membership is overwhelmingly, as they say, monocultural, right?
But even if you don't look like us, if you act like us, that's okay. You know, we're not going to ask you about your culture or anything, but if you are the same economic status as us or educational status as us, as long as you can kind of act like us,
right,
you're more than welcome to come and join us.
Yep. And then what's the result of the inclusion group?
That's the vision of diversity. We look diverse. It's about how we're kind of presented, maybe.
And I wonder, we look diverse, right? I always wonder if people who happen to be the diverse think that they look diverse. But I mean,
Yeah.
I told that story last week. People used to say, "All safe is diverse." I'm like, we're not diverse. We have some gay people.
And it's always interesting being the person that makes the congregation diverse.
Thank you.
being like the three people who make the congregation diverse. Yeah, it doesn't quite feel like diversity to us.
Joanne, say a little bit about the human resources axiom.
It's something when teaching business ethics, you look at diversity, you look at all the training and all this kind of stuff they make you go through. And I think as Sister Veronica just said, who's the diverse one here? What am I doing for you? But it's very important that if the leader does not have diverse experiences, recognition, visibility, respect, trust, authenticity is a very difficult relationship to establish with your group if you're the leader or the priest or whatever. And so how are we defining diverse experiences? How are we defining diversity? And then that determines how welcoming you appear. I would say, how do you present diverse? What is that? Is it size, shape, race, gender, age, abilities, nationalities? How are we defining it? If we're only going to define it in terms of sex and race, maybe not even economy, I don't know, but to be a leader, you have to show experiences or recognition, authenticity, whatever. It just
a bandwidth for that experience, would you say?
That's good too. I like that. Good. We're good.
I think the basic premise of any of this is basic respect as another human being. And if you basically respect people, you don't have to worry about diversity or any of the rest of it. We're all children of God, and if you can respect people as a human being, you got it made. But very few people can do that.
I think, Rosemary, you're farther along, but I'm going to push back on that.
Okay.
And I'm going to say that people who look like me frequently say that, but very rarely do people of color say that. But not to say that we're against, anybody happens to be against, everybody is a children of God. I'm in with that. I want that on the record. I'm favor of that.
Good.
So
I'd like to say that I love the idea, that we're all children of God and respect. I really like that, respecting one another. But it's hard to respect one another without knowing each other's culture and knowing, having some education and background in the culture. I can have every intent to be respectful and still make boo-boos. No.
I think inclusion also makes us feel better. Like, look at us. We have a gay person in our congregation. Yay, us. Instead of,
that's part of the diverse experiences. How many of us are actually willing to risk or go out and about and engage in other cultures, neighborhoods, situations, workplaces, conferences, do we have that emotional social skill set to be the other? I mean, that is, I think, what they were trying to say. Unless we've had the experience, or at least try and seek it out, engage or recognize to be the other in a situation, then a lot of cues, education, authenticity, humanity is missed.
I think, just looking too at this graph, not a graph, but the list that she made, the 3
Yeah, the
columns.
table. Yeah.
The table, thank you. That's the word. So the result in inviting and inclusion was the retention of a monoculture. Even though they
Yeah.
maybe had people who were different, they had the other in their midst. They were still basically a monoculture. And then in the radical welcome, transformed and transforming community with open doors and open hearts. Different groups share power. And that was one of her big points this time is who has power in the church? Is it the old white people sitting up in the vestry? Or is it everybody? Are there young people? Are there gay people? Are there people of color on the vestry? Are there poor people on the vestry?
Yeah. So you guys have pointed out like just the real highlights that she has in this section. So here's what we're going to do next. We're going to put you in small groups and you guys are going to ask each other, so where is your church in inviting inclusion or radical welcome? So that's what you get to discuss in your small groups. So
10
I
minutes.
think
10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay.
Yep. 10 minutes and just look at it and just go, boom, we do this, this, and this. So I guess that must put us either between here or here. So, and just be friends, just go at it with a knife. Be fearless in deciding where you are.
Are you going to segregate people by different congregations? I see 4 people on 4 different groups on my screen from the same congregation.
There are 6 of us.
6 of us, okay.
That is going to be upper level Zoom management that I flunked. So we're going to just put you into groups, and we've got 23 and 6 of you from St. Clair's. You got a 25% chance of being with somebody else.
I'd rather be with somebody else. I want to talk with other churches. I mean, I love you guys, but geez.
We're already, we know we're somewhat of a monoculture. So.
Speaking of monocultures.
I have the same feelings for all of you, yes.
How
many people per group are we doing?
Let's see. I would do like, what do you figure, 3 breakout rooms? And that gives you a good chunk. Or do you want to do 4 breakout rooms?
I think 4.
Okay, Sister V, calling for higher math. All right. Okay, so there you go. Say yes. Are you back? Do you feel like you've been like on Star Trek and just transported to and from, and you just kind of dissolved a little bit and then you came back? So what'd you come up with, friends? Go ahead, Bill. Did you get stuck with people you didn't want to be with?
Unfortunately, St. Clair's was 3/5 of the group, but that wasn't that bad. The other 2/5 spoke right up, and we had a good group. The problem is, I think that the time was just enough to get the group opening up and communicating well with each other, and we didn't get beyond that stage, I don't think.
All right, so you didn't figure out where St. Clair's is?
Well, no, I sort of have a feeling where St. Clair's is, but the idea of the other 2 congregations, how they can.
Well, tell us where St. Clair's is in your humble opinion.
with what Barbara Scoville said last week, we live in a white community with middle class people, and that's where we are. But there are ways that we can reach out more. We can reach out more to poor people that live in Ann Arbor. We have a small number of other skin colors. They're more, well, see, one of the difficulties is that Ypsilanti tends to be the poor side of the tracks for Ann Arbor. And
Hey, be very careful, Bill. Be very careful. Seriously, don't go there.
Well, in
Hey, I just went
an
to,
economic sense, it's true. How about that?
well, I just went to Ipsy today to get my first dose of vaccine. And it was a beautiful sunny day, and it's a very pretty little town, you know, and I had a favorable impression. But we do have a kind of a general feeling that it has more poverty, and their school system isn't as good, and blah, blah, blah. But that's that. I want to go by that, because one thing that Joanne talked about was how actually diverse her congregation is. And that just sounded so appealing and interesting to me. But one thing that came out of it is that I was thinking, what if everybody in our white congregation told their story about how they came to be a Christian and how they came to Jesus, how their life was changed, what it was like before, what it's like now? What if everybody told their story and we realized that we really were diverse? I think Joanne kind of said that, you know. She
Yeah,
said,
she did.
yeah,
She
talk
talked
to
about
people,
the
talk to
diversity
people.
among white people, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, what else?
I want to thank Bonnie Anderson for helping me look at St. Michael's differently, because we may not have a common welcoming or even moving beyond, but as individuals, when we accept our ministry and where we're at, then we can be some of these things, like maybe even radically welcome to those people that we are ministering with. Like we have someone that works at the Salvation Army Food Bank. We have someone that volunteers at the St. Peter's Free Clinic. We have someone that does something with a horse riding rehabilitation thing. I volunteer at the school where I used to work. So even though we don't have a common thing together, we can do it as individuals and represent the church that way. So thank you, Bonnie.
It was, Cindy, it was just so amazingly wonderful to hear what you all are doing. And it sounds like you're really into it. And it just, I just think it's great.
Well, thank you.
Other groups? Other folks had experiences? Where do you think your congregation was or is?
Well, I guess I'll speak for St. Andrews. That's not a good statement. I guess I'll speak for what I think is going on in St. Andrews, because I certainly can't speak for St. Andrews. I think we're somewhere in the area of the middle of the table. I think that we certainly meet the tolerant of racial column, but we're not fully into the actually grasping all of the diversity. I'm not even sure we're obviously a majority white congregation. I'm not even sure we're fully diverse within the white community. So I think there's that part of it. I think the only thing I got out of all that was that there are people at St. Andrews who are meeting regularly and trying to grasp what we can do to make changes in being more inclusive in race. I certainly believe a radical welcoming is the way to be, but I'm not so sure a lot of established congregations can physically make that change. That's a lot of people trying to do something a lot different. I'll just make one comment. I've been since the virus, Mary and I have been watching our Sunday services at the National Cathedral. And if you want an example of where you can go, that's a pretty good example. I mean, they've done a lot of great things there, particularly in the area of music. I love their music services. I don't see our music drifting at all. So I don't think that's an open area of change. Those are things that are just so totally inbred in the church. I got involved with St. Andrews because of a lot of work I was doing in the LGBT community in Ann Arbor, and about 25 years ago. And I thought St. Andrews has done a pretty good job with the LGBT community, but and I think most people at St. Andrews would want to do better in terms of welcoming different race. We do a lot with the breakfast program, so we do have a chance to interact with the homeless community and the lower income communities, but not in terms of giving them space to do things in our building. I mean, they're not inviting them in to serve during the service or anything like that. So, I think we're moving. I hate to say this, I think we're moving to the right, but I just mean on the table, not politically. I think that, I think we're doing something every week in terms of groups talking about, and again, we're very heavily focused on race right now, as opposed to diversity. I mean, that's where it's at right now for most of us.
Levels, all sorts of different levels of diversity, and more white Americans would do well focusing on race. I don't think it's going to get us. I don't think it's going to get us in trouble.
No. And there's a long way to go, even to get to the point where we even understand what we're talking about. So it's a ways to go. But I think we could do a heck of a lot more in terms of social and economic and groups like that. Our church, we're pretty similar in the pews. So that's kind of where I felt we were at. And I need to say again, I'm only speaking for myself because I'm pretty sure I could find a few people who disagree with me.
Bob, I have a question. Have you all ever talked about your own ethnicity? I think that might be a good place to start with regards to identifying your own quote unquote diversity.
Yeah.
You know, in my family, there was Irish, and they never thought of themselves as white until they came to the United States, and then they started being called white. So, talking about what kind of a heritage you have might help with getting a handle on some idea of what diversity can be.
Yeah. No, that's really good idea.
She talks a lot about, understanding your own identity. And she has examples of churches who hadn't examined their identity until someone who they thought was other started trying to come in.
Yeah.
And she talked about just the necessity of understanding, well, who are you? What is your identity that you've been holding on to? And that's when you get into, all right, well, what are the power dynamics if someone else comes in? Are you going to share power if someone else comes in? And so, understanding your own identity is something that I loved how she addressed it in this book. So we were going to move on to the continuum on becoming an anti-racist multicultural institution. It's this lovely table on pages 70 and 71 if you have the book. It's beyond inviting and inclusion. And so when I was reading this, one of the questions I thought in looking at this table is, not just where are we at as congregations, but where do you guys think we are as a diocese on this continuum?
Take a moment, look it over again, and then put some answers in the chat with a couple of words saying why you think that. We'll get all the answers in the chat and then we'll have a little conversation. Then we'll have a chat. Interesting, Bonnie. Yeah. Keep going.
Told you I can't get to the pages.
Because,
it's on a Kindle.
Yeah. Here.
Oh, that was good.
Real books.
Let's just remember that I'm always helpful. Okay, keep going. So Bonnie, it's 1 is exclusive, segregated institution. 2, passive, a club institution. 3, symbolic change, a multicultural institution. 4, identity change, an anti-racist institution. 5, structural change, a transforming institution. 6, fully inclusive, a transformed institution and a transformed society.
I think 4.
Yeah, 2 of the comments from Bonnie and Matt and another one from Debbie, they point out something that's difficult about our diocese because of geography. We're geographically very segregated. And that means that we have to put that much more effort into actually moving, from one space on this continuum to the next. Yeah.
Sister V and I both had the same when we got to this table. I said, you know what I was thinking about with this? I was kind of wondering, where's the diocese? And Sister V is like, that's exactly what I was asking. And then we played the game. What'd you say? No, what'd you say? And we both said the same thing, 3.5.
I think that because of your efforts, Bonnie Perry, that I see us as a 4 trying to move towards a 5.
I think we're at a 3.5 because of Bishop Bonnie's influence to date. I think we have a ways to go.
So even though the last bishop was African American, you feel that there wasn't much change because of that? Was it simply symbolic? I put you in like identity 4 moving into 5, but maybe there's things about the diocese that I don't know and understand. So
I think it helps that Bishop Bonnie had some experience with this in her previous context.
Mm-hmm.
So she's done this before, so she can help us do it too. And I'm wondering if it was harder for Bishop Gibbs to ask us to tackle this because we wouldn't have accepted it as well from him because he was African American. Or
See,
Bishop Bonney, being a fellow white person, can say, "Hey, look, we've got a problem. We need to
no,
address that."
I think you're absolutely right about that. I mean, think of how, in what ways President Obama was hamstrung, you know, in talking about race. I think that's a really good point.
I do too.
Okay, but then that says something about letting people into leadership, doesn't it? I mean, if you're not respecting, I can't say much about it because I'm new to the diocese. And I guess part of the question is, what do you think the diocese is? Is it the leaders or is it the combination of all the churches that make up the diocese? And if, as all the churches, you're not respecting a Black bishop to lead you, that tells you something about where you are. And now I have to say me too, because I'm part of this diocese.
I don't think it was that we didn't respect him.
Right.
I just think it would have been harder for him to do what we're doing now.
Maybe.
I think if I was particularly early on in my tenure at All Saints in Chicago, I very much wanted to push for LGBT things, and I also would be careful about it. Because well, we know why she wants that, because she is.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting dance for me. I don't know if that was about if Bishop Gibbs experienced anything like that. I just know from my perspective. I also know that people lay groundwork. And this is a diocese which has had a deep social justice groundwork foundation. Decades, which was one of the reasons why I wanted to come here, which is one of the reasons I thought I might actually get called here because of that. What? And there's a point at A, I just want to make another point. This is also super interesting, but more probably only to three of us. Very rare to have three Bonnies on one call. Say that, and I just want to say that Bonnies are not used to sharing their name.
Bonnies are not used to meeting anyone in person named Bonnie. I've met three in my whole life, probably.
We can be Bonnie A, Bishop Bonnie. Yeah. Go back to kindergarten.
But so I take us aside, shocked, I took us down a bunny trail. But or Bonnie. But what Bonnie of Bonnie and Matt was saying is, and Bonnie Anderson was agreeing, is I do think sometimes we're aspirational, right? But there's also, Sister V, help me here. I think there's a theological term for this, and it's sort of proleptic thinking, where you are like, we are living into that which we long for. Now that can be, and then it's fun. You get to use a big word that I learned from Kelly Brown Douglas. But that can be that here we are, we're longing for it, or it could be delusional. My experience has been, as a white person, I can get a little delusional about how far along I might be on race.
Well, but I think there's a lot of that going on. I think we white people know what we feel inside of ourselves, and what we feel inside of ourselves may not look like what we're doing to others, what others think that we're doing.
Well, and that would be that wonderful point that I walked away from in the White Fragility book, Bill.
Yeah.
The difference between intent and impact.
Yeah.
And that's a super helpful thing. Say we are a 3, say we're a diocese longing to be a 3. say we're a 3 longing to be a 4, what I would love for us to think about, what are 2 things that we might do to move us along?
We need public transportation. I'm sorry, but we need something to cross those geographic divides. You need to be willing to drive to Detroit. You need to be willing to, go to Pontiac. You need to be willing to go to Flint. You need to be willing to do that and have real engagements.
What else?
In order to have more diversity, I don't know another word right now, more diversity on all of the groups, all the boards, all of the leadership, who feels welcome enough and who feels that power will be shared. I mean, fortunately, we've moved away from all white male, all straight white male committees, and we've made some bridges into some areas a little bit, not much, but into female and into LGBT and other areas. But I mean, how many people out there think they would have an opportunity to step up and do something without even getting the opportunity? Not worry about getting cut down, but do they even have the opportunity? We reach out for leadership and we reach out to the people who did it before. We reach out to the people that we think like, maybe even what we look like. But people would want to step up to a leadership role. How do we help? I don't want to use the word help. How do we work together? How do we work together so that everyone feels that they can just go to the leadership and say, I want to be part of this and be accepted. And I think that's I don't know how you get that step. I mean, I can't.
I don't want to be the lone millennial here, although I probably am. But one huge action step that, again, seems super millennial is social media. I, being an older millennial, found St. Clair's and Incarnation on Facebook. My little sister, who just turned 17.
Instagram.
Yep. And there's amazing, affirming faith-based Instagram things that, kids are finding, oh my gosh, there are parts of the church that welcome me, and they're engaging, and they have little youth groups on Instagram. It's crazy. And I think that's a big part where some of us who are older and have our ways of communicating could branch out and be hugely welcoming before they even step into our churches.
Bonnie and Matt, boy, I think you really nailed it there. But does everyone have access to social media? I mean, that's one thing. But I think you're absolutely right. We need to be thinking about that and how to use it.
Many people have cell phones.
But we don't always know how to use them.
I think what's important about what Bonnie said is Instagram is where they are. We keep talking about welcoming as though all we have to do is figure out how to open the door and then people will come in. But that's not what welcoming is. Welcoming is going to where the people are.
And going to where the people are, friends, and doing what?
Reaching out, putting ads on, if you can put ads on Instagram, I don't know, but
listening
on Instagram.
Listening. We have got to get past the arrogance of thinking we have something they do not, and start to begin to say, oh my goodness, God has touched you. Would you tell me about that so I can be changed?
I know every year Joanne Hardy has a hard time getting people to run for diocesan offices. But I wonder if we started now to look for people who we thought would be great leaders and invited them to run instead of begging people to run.
Why not one-on-one conversations, finding out what people are passionate about?
Sure. So if I can just, I know what I've been wanting to say for the last few minutes is sometimes when we have these conversations, I feel like we're conflating people who are diverse and poor with being African American. And it feels like we want to answer that call with a service project or some service, community service or feeding program. And I'm not speaking for every Black person, but I don't need anything. I don't need clothing or food or anything or shoes for my kids. So I think we're going to have to move to a different place. I mean, there's always folks who will need things, but there are many African Americans probably who live very close to every one of you on this call that don't need anything. I don't need a service from you. I'm happy to volunteer to help, but I don't need anything. And I think sometimes when we're talking, it feels, and maybe to me, and maybe I'm just sensitive about that, but it feels like you think that you always have to give diverse people something, or they're looking for something, or they need something, when in fact that's just not true.
Well said.
I want to just say that thank Joanne for saying that, and also Joanne Hardy. Joanne Kennedy was in our group, and I think she made a good point also that, and I think one of the things that we could all start doing in our own congregations, and I know I can, or we can at St. John's, is look at our own diversity. We may all be white, but we're all diverse. There's diversity within our community already, more than we probably realize. And so I think getting to know our own community and the diversity that we have and accepting each other's diversity is going to allow us to open ourselves to other people being diverse and coming in. I mentioned I like the Nadia Weber Bowles thing about the messy church. It's like we all have messy lives, and just come, you know, let's be messy together and accept one another and own our own diversity.
Well, but I just would be fearful that by talking to each other and learning about our own diversity, we're not opening ourselves up to that radical welcome. We're just staying within the walls of our church. How do we open ourselves up to that radical welcome? And Bonnie, Joanne, I'm really sorry if by saying, you know, we need to drive to Flint or Pontiac, I didn't mean to at all to give the impression that we need to go there to give service. If we all need God, and that's something we all need, no matter our economic status, our color. And Bishop Bonnie said we have to listen to each other. And I've learned that with my neighbors, where I've moved recently, is they all come from different places, different experiences, and it can open your eyes to how you might expand, how you might grow, how the church might grow.
I think that's what Pamela is talking about, that we need to get to know each other, those of us who all look white, but to find out more about the diversity within the group. I think that's an important step. And we will find those amongst us who have experience in reaching out in different ways to different groups. And that's a step in the right direction.
I was going to say too, one thing I'm really grateful for in my life is that in my work as a nurse, I worked with African American people, and I had African American bosses, co-workers, patients. You know, I realized quite quite quickly when I first entered in that world from my sequestered white world, that gosh, there were Black people that actually did amazing things like become physicians and lawyers and I realized this really opened my eyes. And so I'm really sorry that we give the impression that that's all we think. And I also had the opportunity in my life to work with Hispanic population when I lived in New Mexico, and with Native Americans when I lived up north in Petoskey. And the same thing, there's no way that you can stereotype any one group of people. And, so
yeah.
I think that it's really important to, I'm really grateful for those experiences because I was more with those people rather than, like the book says, they weren't my project. Some days I was their project, So anyway.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to what we were talking about, having leadership that has a diversity of experiences. That has actually moved beyond their kind of core identity and moved outward. And so we kind of want you guys to, this is your homework, to continue thinking about where we are in that continuum, where you think we are as a diocese, and actually on your individual congregations on that continuum, and then think of, let's say, 2 ways that you think you can move us forward on that continuum. 2 things that we can actually do to move us forward on that continuum. And
move the diocese forward?
The diocese and your congregation, if you're thinking about a congregation, yes.
So do you want us to continue reading in the book or just focus on?
Oh, yes.
No. You have to continue reading in the book. You got to.
Oh, okay. All right.
You got to start with the next chapter.
What chapter are we?
So we'll do 75. We'll do the next chapter and then section 3, right?
Yep. We're doing section 3 for next week.
We've got lots and friends, it's all grist for the mill. And it is all the dripping, right? It is the dripping water that bores the hole in the sandstone. Right? The change is bit by bit by bit. And it's way more fun if you have other folks with you.
Indeed. Okay. So I think you get to close us with prayer, Bishop Bonnie, since I opened.
All right. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Thank you. Let us pray. Oh, Holy One. Oh, we are living and moving and having our being in you, and we are listening and looking and learning and trying. Oh my God, we are trying so hard to be the people who we know you long for us to be, to embrace our gifts, to know our flaws, and to know that our flaws, when known and offered to you, can be changed. So help us to do that, to meet and greet people along the way, to learn from them. And in the midst of all of this, in a world it's hard right now, God, it is so freaking hard and we're tired. Help us to rest in you, knowing that you love us so profoundly. Help us to rest in that so that we may be renewed again. And tomorrow when the sun comes up, that we may rise to the occasion. All this we ask in your Son, Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you all. That was a great conversation.
Yes, thank you all. I loved it.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. Oh, and 2 more weeks and Stephanie's going to be with us, right? Yay! So the other thing, friends, be thinking of your questions, and maybe next week, Anna, Sister V, remind me I said this, we'll start collating them. so we can have a set of questions that we might want Stephanie to address with us, so we don't just fangirl her, but actually have a real, solid, wonderful conversation.
Great.
All right. Good night. Be well.
Bye.
Right.
Your vaccine when you can.
Thank you all.